Meanwhile, Toshimichi Okubo's secretary stumbled upon a European cipher codebook. Recalling that Toshiyoshi had once studied abroad in Europe and had single-handedly established the police force, he used the book to decipher the contents of the Kodoku telegram. He rushed to the Home Ministry to report this discovery to Toshimichi Okubo. Unbeknownst to him, however, Toshiyoshi had already stationed Enju there to lie in wait. Consequently, the secretary was intercepted and assassinated by Enju on his way to deliver the report.
お前らの目的は何だ。
それはあなたは知らなくていい。あと少しだったのに。残念でした。
Word that Shujiro had leaked the inside details of the tournament to Toshimichi Okubo had already reached Toshiyoshi and the financial tycoons. But Toshiyoshi was well prepared for this.
報告によると、面白い参加者たちが佐賀国州の近くに集まってきているようです。亡霊同士、孤独の壺の中で殺し合ってもらおうじゃないですか。
He shared the news with the tycoons just as they were preparing to leave. He revealed that Toshimichi Okubo was already aware that both the tycoons and the police department were involved in this deadly hunting game. Seeing the tycoons' visible anxiety, Toshiyoshi assured them that he had already devised a countermeasure. Knowing that Shujiro was accompanied by several highly skilled samurai, Toshiyoshi planned to manipulate them into slaughtering one another. That night, Kyojin quietly appeared before Sansuke and Raizo Tachibana. He had no intention of dueling them. Instead, he directly stated his purpose. Kyojin revealed to the two of them that Gentosai was currently hunting down Shujiro and Iroha. Meanwhile, Shujiro's trio arrived at a bustling festival market. It was teeming with noise and crowds of people who had gathered from various villages. However, unbeknownst to them, Bukotsu and Gentosai, an elder of the Kyohachi Ryu, were also hidden among the crowd. An inevitable storm was about to break out. The story flashes back to the battlefields of the Boshin War 10 years ago. Under the indiscriminate artillery bombardment of the new Meiji government, the once massive front lines were instantly reduced to scorched earth. Very few samurai survived the battlefield, and Shujiro and Bukotsu were among those few. At the time, both served under the new government as executioners tasked with wiping out the remnants of the old regime. Amidst the chaos, Shujiro gradually realized that the era of the sword was coming to an end. Bukotsu, however, was addicted to slaughter like a bloodthirsty beast, constantly clamoring for a duel to the death with Shujiro. The bloodshed deeply thrilled Bukotsu, who was always searching for a strong opponent to fight. Faced with Bukotsu's madness, Shujiro remained silent. He simply slashed a bone-deep wound across Bukotsu's chest, then turned and vanished into the smoke. Bukotsu was left standing in the center of the battlefield, roaring in wild fury. Relying on his almost monster-like vitality, Bukotsu survived, only to be locked away in the deep dungeons of the Tokyo Metropolitan Police Department a few years later. However, one day, Sakura quietly appeared in his cell. Sakura personally unlocked the iron door, handed Bukotsu his weapons, and presented him with an invitation to the Kodoku tournament. At that moment, the lifelessness in Bukotsu's eyes ignited once more. He finally had another chance to hunt down Shujiro. Returning to the present, Shujiro watched a joyful futaba at the festival, and once again thought of his own family. Observing the lively scene before her, Iroha suddenly asked Shujiro what a real family was like. Shujiro replied that family is something you want to protect, even if it means sacrificing everything else to do so. Elsewhere, Kyojin had secretly leaked their location to Sansuke and Raizo Tachibana. He seemed to be eagerly anticipating a bloody battle between the Kyohachi Ryu and Gentosai.
佐賀修二郎と衣笠いろはこのままほっといたら殺されるで。この先の神社でな祭りをやっとる。二人はそこにおる。幻冬祭もな。
今のは一体何なんですか、幻冬祭って。
しんのすけ君、世の中にはな知らん方がええこともあるんやで。
でも
せっかくやし楽しもうや。この孤独っちゅう遊びを。
While Iroha went off alone to pray, she ran right into Gentosai. Gentosai spotted her as well.
氷八流継承者の8衣笠いろは見つけたぞ。
With no time to run back to the bonfire and call for Shujiro's help, she frantically retreated into a nearby residential house, desperately seeking a chance to survive. Meanwhile, still immersed in a brief moment of peace, Shujiro remained completely unaware of the approaching danger. Suddenly, a blood-curdling scream rang out from the crowd, causing the surrounding people to scatter in panic. His face twisted with excitement. Bukotsu locked onto Shujiro's figure within the dense crowd like a wild beast. He immediately drew his sword and charged at him furiously. Fending off the attacks, Shujiro yelled at the bystanders to get back, quickly clearing out a large space in the center of the square. In order to force Shujiro into a fight to the death, Bukotsu mercilessly slaughtered another civilian. Witnessing him indiscriminately killing the innocent, the kind-hearted Futaba was engulfed in fury and bravely stepped forward to confront him. Seeing this terrifying scene, Shujiro desperately screamed for Futaba to run away. However, Bukotsu seized the opportunity to take Futaba hostage.
よせ向こうその子を離せ。
こいつ殺したらやる気になりそうだ。
To save her, Shujiro had no choice but to slash Bukotsu's arm with his sword, yet even this failed to halt the man's absolute madness. Slashing wildly, Bukotsu left a trail of blood as he and Shujiro tumbled down flight after flight of stone steps. Meanwhile, as Iroha hid inside the house, she unexpectedly encountered its owner, only to watch in horror as he was impaled the very next second. Struggling, she managed to slip beneath the floorboards and crawl away, narrowly avoiding a long blade that thrust down viciously right past her cheek. Gentosai tracked Iroha to an ancient well in the mountains, where she launched a surprise attack from behind. Though clearly no match for him, she refused to back down. Covered in wounds, Iroha watched in despair as Gentosai slowly rose to his feet once again. Relentlessly advancing on her, Gentosai coldly declared that he would slaughter them all, one by one. At this critical moment, Raizo Tachibana suddenly dashed into the fray, launching a fierce assault at Gentosai's back. Immediately following, Sansuke unleashed a lethal strike from the shadows. Yet even against the combined pincer attack of the two martial brothers, Gentosai stood as solid as an iron wall, effortlessly holding his own in the two-on-one battle. All the while, his cold gaze remained deadlocked on Iroha nearby. Fending off Sansuke and Raizo Tachibana's attacks, Gentosai continued to stalk toward Iroha. Despite the duo's seamless teamwork, however, they struggled to even put a dent in this monstrous opponent. Ultimately, Raizo Tachibana made the call for Sansuke to evacuate the heavily injured Iroha, choosing to stay behind alone to fight for his life. Elsewhere, Shujiro and Bukotsu's bloody brawl tore through the festival until they crashed into the warehouse storing the fireworks. Bukotsu relentlessly pressed his attack on Shujiro. With both warriors completely drained of stamina, they took a moment to catch their breath before clashing once again. Sparks from their colliding blades instantly ignited their surroundings. A massive fire erupted, and the blazing inferno quickly consumed the entire building. Standing outside, Futaba watched the roaring flames grow, her heart overwhelmed with sorrow. Just when everyone assumed they had perished, two flame-engulfed figures burst from the inferno, plunging together into the nearby river. Shujiro then assumed an eerie, two-handed sword stance, and the very air seemed to stand still. Time froze in that moment as the look in Shujiro's eyes completely changed. This was the true Kokushu, the manslayer. News of Shujiro slaying Bukatsu quickly made its way back to the organizers. The tycoons who had bet on Bukatsu mourned their loss, gaining a newfound respect for Shujiro's strength. Toshiyoshi, however, was entirely indifferent to the outcome. Shortly after, Toshiyoshi took a carriage to Tokyo for a face-to-face meeting with Toshimichi Okubo. In truth, the ideals of Home Minister Toshimichi Okubo and Toshiyoshi had diverged long ago. Yet, remembering how they had ushered in a new era together, Okubo still clung to a final glimmer of hope.
ここから日本が国として強くなるために必要なものは何だ？民衆だ。その民衆を守るためだ。武力で民意は得られない。そんなこともわからんのか。河内、士族は不要になる。だが共に生きる道を見つけねばこの国に未来はない。
Thus, he had sent a telegram requesting a private parley. However, as Toshimichi Okubo's carriage traveled along the road, his driver and guards were suddenly ambushed and killed. The assassin was none other than Sakura, an old acquaintance of Okubo's. When the tragic news of Toshimichi Okubo's assassination broke, Shujiro immediately sensed that it was deeply tied to the dark undercurrents of the Kodoku tournament. Just then, a man sought out Shujiro. He informed him that due to the critical situation, Hisoka had ordered them to return to Tokyo immediately. As Shujiro prepared to depart, he unknowingly crossed paths with Toshiyoshi's passing carriage. Elsewhere, having narrowly escaped death, Iroha treated her wounds in a hidden safe house. She planned to regroup with her martial brothers before engaging in a final, decisive battle against Jintosai. Iroha knew deep down that if Shujiro hadn't left first, she would undoubtedly have perished in the battle for succession. Given Jintosai's formidable strength, their only chance of defeating him was to combine their powers. Upon learning of Toshimichi Okubo's death, the tycoons were actually thrilled. They believed that Toshiyoshi had finally dropped his disguise and made his true move. Watching the surviving samurai, the tycoons buzzed with unparalleled excitement. They knew the remainder of the tournament would be the most spectacular part yet. The Kodoku tournament raged on, and the remaining contenders were all formidable warriors who had carved their way out of mountains of corpses and seas of blood. A swift-footed man wove lightly among the surrounding competitors, treating the slaughter as a joyous game of plunder. Passing by, Jinroku Kiig witnessed a competitor laughing gleefully as he killed, terrifying Jinroku so much that he shook his head and frantically backed away. At the same time, while roasting a pheasant, Kam piously performed rites to guide the spirit of his prey to the afterlife. Meanwhile, Jintosai materialized in front of Kyojin. It turned out that Jintosai's appearance at the festival was entirely due to a tip-off from Kyojin. Back in Tokyo, Sakura trained relentlessly in the martial arts, biding his time for his fated duel with Shujiro. As all the survivors steadily march toward their final destination of Tokyo, this season's story comes to an abrupt end. As for the climactic battle destined to shake the entire era, we will have to wait for the highly anticipated Season 2.